Hello and welcome back to another episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. And coming back to the show, returning, the man who has introduced me to so many people because he got me into the whole LinkedIn space. And honest to goodness, at this point, 90% of guests who show up on this show, when I say, hey, how should people go and connect with you? They say LinkedIn, because I'm meeting all these folks via LinkedIn, the power of the network, all of it. He really has made a huge difference in my life. I know has made a huge difference in the lives of a lot of lawyers because he is the LinkedIn ghostwriter for attorneys, or his agency Contender really is the powerhouse behind secretly a lot of some of the biggest names that you see on LinkedIn are probably powered by my guest today, Tony Albrecht. Tony, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm thrilled to be here, and I love the energy of that intro. I'm hyped. I'm amped. Let's go.
I love it. All right, Tony, for the second time that you've heard it, what's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
I don't recall what I said the first time we did this.
Okay.
I should have gone back and listened. This time, I'm going to do one that's actually related to when you had Owen McGran on, and you asked him, and then he did his whole didactic rant about law school.
Wait, Owen doing a didactic rant? No, it's never happened.
Oh my! What? I saw a post this morning where I believe it was a law student who asked for reference or like book recommendations for learning, and he recommended Notes from the Underground. It's like, you are a curmudgeon of the highest order. What a punk! Anyway, what they don't teach you in law school is that big law is not actually the optimal path for a lawyer or a career in law. I graduated from law school in 2009. Mm-hmm. I did badly enough in my first semester of law school that I never had a shot at our OCI on-campus interviews. Mm-hmm. I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm pleased with how things have worked out, and I think I would have come to ruin had I actually ended up going the big law path anyway. But I recall just law school being so geared toward, like, everything is just funneled that direction. That it's like the curriculum and recruiting and so many aspects are putting that up on the pedestal when it's really a small percentage of people who actually practice in big environments. Yeah. And then secondly, just that idea that is success, which for my, demented, booze-addled 27-year-old mind, I was pretty messed up in how I was thinking about what success should look like. And maybe by the time I was 27, I was starting to get a better sense of it. But certainly at 24, I was totally delusional. And, just there's so much room for improvement in legal education, as far as I can tell. And now from this grateful distance I have, saying that there are 1,000 different ways to build a career, that most likely your career is not going to be linear. It's probably not going to be as predictable as you might think or hope it would be. Mm-hmm. And that getting where you're going or where you want to go, that future, that life you want to build for yourself, like, there are just 1,000 different ways to get there. So don't worry about that one path that they put forward as the holy grail of the legal profession.
It is fascinating. And I mean, it's true in the legal, almost on a hyper-realistic level. That is true within the legal profession. And of course, it carries over into so many other spaces, so many other professions, industries, asking for us to be so assured of what our future holds. Honestly, at any point in your life, much obviously in your late teens, your early mid-20s, that's insane. But truly, even when you're in your 30s or even your 40s, acting like you know exactly the path that you are going to go down and that you are 100% confident it's what you're going to want in a decade, I think is kind of a fool's errand, Tony.
I think that's right, Charlie. And tomorrow is actually 2 years since I went all in on Contender. It's my full
So
time
Halloween is
anniversary.
the anniversary?
Halloween is indeed the anniversary. Yeah. When I went all in, I went all basically with like two clients, plus like a contract where I was writing for uh, somebody, our mutual friend Evan Chastain. He had me working with him on one, and on October 31st, my first day full time on Contender, I woke up and there was an email from that client saying, "I think I'm going to go a different direction." Perfect. 8 a.m. on my first day, I lose a client. Well, this is going well. But yeah, I'm 42 years old. If you had told me 3 years ago that I would be doing this, it wouldn't have occurred to me this was a way to make money, right? So it just goes to your point. Life comes at you in a hurry, right? And we are not good at telling the future.
I'm curious, Tony. So you get that email 8 a.m. day one. Two things. One, how did you handle that moment? And two, would you change the way that you handled that moment?
I recorded a video and I put it up on LinkedIn. That's how I handled it. Honestly, I thought it was funny. That was, I mean, just so perfect, right? I think I think I have a relatively high risk tolerance just in general, right? And so I knew what I was getting myself into. I wasn't building my business on that contract anyway. Like out of the three,
Right.
that was like the third one. Yeah, so mainly it was just, I like the line that the universe is not without a sense of humor. And what better illustration of that than, hey, let's just throw this little wrench in the gear. See how you handle this one, dude. How you feel about that? Oh, that's good. That's delightful. That's delightful.
Honestly, though, that you say like throwing the wrench in it, that's the type of wrench that gets thrown in the way of whether it's an agency owner or a law firm owner, where that thing strikes and you go, have I made a terrible choice? And people will freeze up, they will panic, they will suffer from, paralysis by analysis, and it causes them to not carry forward in that moment, right? They end up going, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to turn out a different way. I thought this path might at least be not this difficult. Did you just have, the cosmic sense of humor, the gumption, the risk tolerance, but for the person who is more apt to panic, what should they take from Tony's moment of wisdom that could help them when that happens? And it's a win, not if.
I think a person who is prone to panic probably shouldn't take that particular kind of leap, right, Charlie? That person is most likely not cut out for the entrepreneurial path.
But there are a lot of law firm owners who, they don't, when they launch the firm, right, they don't see themselves as the entrepreneur. They see themselves as the classic, I'm going to make myself my own boss, right? Oh, I've seen all these people with these single shingles, and then they get a taste and they go, I don't know, maybe I want to be more significant about this. And then boom, roadblock hits, key employee quits, client files malpractice suit against them, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And now they're having that first moment of panic without knowing themselves prior to that moment.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And it is funny how I think this may have been my answer to the question we start with, and the first time was about how we don't learn anything about business in law school. And for me, entrepreneurship did not cross my radar as an option. I was not a person who was thinking about maybe starting my own practice out of law school. Never occurred to me. And now, most of my clients, as are yours, are law firm owners of small to medium-sized firms. And it is amazing how so many of us, those owners, don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. And you're lawyers who run a law firm. Um, and I think part of that, when I answer this question quickly, Charlie, like that, how do you handle when that stuff happens? Also, I do think it's tied to the entrepreneurial mindset, which is exactly what you described. And they just, things are going to go wrong. That's just part of the deal.
Yeah.
I describe it as like, in this game, the reward for solving a problem is two bigger, hairier, meaner problems. That's just, this is the life we've chosen. So I think when you get punched in the mouth like that, it may, well, it's going to reveal something, right? And every entrepreneur you talk to talks about resilience, right? Just the need to get back up after you get knocked down, because as you're saying, you will get knocked down routinely. Like there will be shots that will at least knock you off balance, if not flat out knock you over. And I think my hunch is that if you are wired a particular way, if you're wired as that entrepreneur, then it may be almost sort of a perverse, so like liking of that experience, right? Like that heightened sense of awareness and the stakes feeling higher. And if you are not like that, then you're probably going to go find a job.
Yes, which by the way is okay for some people, right? Like that. That's the path that ultimately needs to happen. Makes
absolutely.
Sense.
Yeah. And entrepreneurship gets glorified, but I increasingly think it's largely a matter of wiring, like whether you're the sort of person who's interested in doing that. Do you think about it that way?
Yeah, honestly. So I think about, say, my brother and sister, who they are now both involved in government and, big corporate work. And I don't think I am capable of operating in those environments with the structure and the ask of me to sort of do what is simply required of me, because I'm gonna wander. That's just where my brain's gonna go, and I'm gonna think I have a better idea sometimes, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. And I kind of just need to test it and find out, and it's not always happy results, but that's okay. That's what we signed up for. So yeah, there's got to be a little bit of now. I guess the big question is, do you think it's legitimate hardwiring? Is there some amount of, like, what's the nature versus nurture on an entrepreneur here, Tony?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think I'm moving in the direction that it's hardwiring, that it's nature. I recommended the book Driven to you, didn't I? Doug Blackman.
No.
All right, we're going to put that in the show notes, Charlie, man.
Okay.
And I should have recommended that book to you. That was one that somebody at the Fireproof Summit recommended to me a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to resonate with you. Basic idea, it's an epigeneticist who wrote it. And I found it to be the most apt description of myself that I've ever read. He's talking about how they're basically genetic markers, and I don't know, but it's like a gene that they call the wanderlust gene, like where you say you are inclined toward wandering. And then the second being, it's never good enough. Right. So it's like a gene that's saying that you're always,
I feel that vibe.
you're looking toward the horizon. And so it's like we have a hard time accepting that things are okay, that everything's good, that we got the reward. And when we get the reward, then it's like almost immediately that any satisfaction is going to go. I was like, okay, now what? And yeah, they describe those people as driven, and a lot of entrepreneurs seem to fall into that. So I can't speak to the veracity of the scientific
You're not going to
foundation
put
of that book.
yourself out there as a doctoral candidate or anything.
I'm not going to do. I have no interest in doing that. But it really did. It resonated a lot. So yeah, check that out, Charlie.
Huh. Interesting. Well, that description of, not good enough. It's so that when I think about, celebrating wins, my line for it is, I love to watch my team celebrate our wins.
Yep.
And from very early on, and part of it was established in theater for me. We'd do a show and we get together at the end of every show. And my high school director would just bring us together and just say, next case, right? Okay, it's time to move on. I was like, yep, I get that vibe. I'm totally with that. Whatever accolades or good things that have come so far, the show's packed up. It's time to work on the next one. Who cares what we just did? That's kind of the point of theater, is that it is ephemeral and fleeting.
Yeah, and so much of the joy, and I feel like we should talk about like branding or LinkedIn or something. But
we'll do that.
I think for me, the getting past booze, like coming to grips with my relationship with booze, and some people listening to this will have heard, at least in passing, my Guamanian jail cell story. Thanksgiving night 2009, regaining consciousness on a concrete slab 3 months into my first job as an attorney, as an associate on the island of Guam, 10,000 miles from St. Louis, my hometown. I think the process of getting sober in 2009, 2010, it helped me to start to learn to love the process, just like that mastery path. And I know this is something we've talked about, and I love how you embody this and what you do, like with the leather working, with like your woodworking, with, I mean, even with how you approach like lifting, like those things we take on that are challenging, and it's in just being able to get in the flow state as we're doing something that is challenging and that we can get better at, and that we can make things happen on. Things like that. That's been the key for me, where it's one of our not quite core values for Contender is about shoveling shit, which is
not quite core value. I like that.
Yeah, it's not quite core. We've got our core, and then we've got some that are not quite core. And it's just one that, if we're on the path toward the mission, then let's shovel the shit with a smile, right? Because that's just part of the deal.
So that all relates. I'll give that as the window to talk LinkedIn, brand that, because the process that you mentioned, following the process, sticking to the process, that's one of those things that when we look at the marketing sphere overall, finding the process, honoring the process, sticking to the process seems to be, like, I guess when people think about a brand, they don't think about a process behind it, right? Like, yeah, for most people, it's going to be something that just changes in a moment almost.
Yeah, it's a thing, right? It's it's the usually visuals, right? It's what you see.
Or tagline, right? It's when you think of blue, what do you think of, right? I think of the ocean. Okay, well, blue's brand is the ocean. When you see a tiger with a scales of justice behind it, I'm thinking law tigers, right? Okay, now we've got rudimentary brand, but what you're doing for clients and what you're teaching in your cohort coaching is a different approach to that. Something that seems to be, that takes more time, steadier, requires process. So talk to me about that process.
I appreciate that question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. Nicely done, Charlie. So yeah, I still don't really consider myself a real marketer. I still feel like I'm a total neophyte to that. I, yeah, I mean, when I talk to you, when I talk to somebody like Ron Latz or Cooper Sauter, like you guys have been doing it for a number of years. A lot of it, I feel like I don't understand, frankly, to be honest with you. I describe myself as a lawyer who accidentally got good at LinkedIn after leaving the practice 3 years ago. I took a business development role. You know this story. I started showing up on LinkedIn, gained traction, writing about creativity after leaving the practice. And then only then did I see, oh, there are lawyers dropping into my DMs. I've got lawyers looking at my profile all over the place. It's because LinkedIn's showing them my stuff because LinkedIn doesn't have better stuff to show them. And then that was one of the early light bulbs of, oh, there's something here. Okay, interesting. And so when I started Contender, I remember the first time I was going to go through a personal brand process, I actually hired somebody to come in and run through a session with somebody. It's like I didn't even, I figured I could do it, but I wasn't even thinking in terms of personal brand. And this was less than 2 years ago now. That was not top of mind for me. And it was only after, as I started working with people, that I started to develop. I have a tool now called Your Brand Pyramid, and I've been sort of iterating and refining that pyramid. And it's 6 levels, going from your motivation, your core values, your vibe, how you want people to feel when they interact with you, your territory, which is the stuff, the ground you cover in your content online, your people, like the people you're trying to reach and have an impact on. And then the top is your corner of the internet, that piece of digital real estate you're out to claim and own, which I think of as being missionally driven. And what I've come to see for myself and for just about everybody I work with is, this podcast is what they don't teach you in law school. And they don't teach us any of this stuff in school, like in any kind of school, right?
Yeah.
It's all brand new. So I've basically been bumping my way through trying to, number one, just like understand this territory in general, just of what does it mean to show up online. We know that it's incredibly powerful and you can figure out how to do it. What does it mean to do it? What are the aspects we need to be thinking about for how we show up as individuals? What are the mechanics of a given digital space? For me, my specialty is LinkedIn. You've gotten pretty handy on that platform yourself. I think if you're,
thanks to you.
Well, I'm happy to help, my friend. But you're a master of email marketing, right? So like the mechanics of how that space works, when you put things down in an email, you send it out into the world, and like magic, things happen. And then how we tie it all together to achieve goals, right? To leverage how we show up online in a way that we can, make good things happen out in the real world. And it is an evolutionary process. Like it's something, the brand pyramid for each of my clients is a living document. It's something that we'll tweak. It's something we refer back to routinely. Ultimately I think of it as like a personal brand is something that can help. It's in service of us and what we're trying to do, if that makes sense. So it's like, it's not meant to be like something that you come up with and then boom, like that's what it is.
Right.
I think it's always a process of discovery, refinement, exploration.
Most people are not the same person 2 years from now, a year from now, than they are today. I mean, inevitably, your brand is going to shift with that. You're going to gain attributes. You're going to get rid of attributes, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. You got to reckon with that. I appreciate, Tony, that perspective of the brand, the personal brand being a living document. That's not, because most people would probably like that to just be a solved issue, right? They just want to know, this is my brand, good, sweet, put it on a sticker and put it everywhere. But instead, actually, let me ask you this. When it comes to a personal brand, how much of it is about you bring, like the person bringing out who they want to be in the world versus the existing perception of them, or the perception that is perhaps most useful for them to achieve their goals?
Another really good question. So specifically on LinkedIn, with the did I disappear for a second?
You're good.
Okay. We'll cut that in post.
We won't cut it. Everyone's going to hear all of this. Let's be very clear. I don't do cuts, Tony.
You
no,
still
not
don't edit at all?
I refuse to. They're going to hear this entire thing right now. Are you kidding me?
You're a grown man. Edit your podcast. Okay, all right.
And I have someone else, by the way, shout out to Brian Austin, one of my team members who handles the podcast, and his directive is, Brian, don't edit this. We don't need to edit this. Barring massive, catastrophic technical failure, there's no edits. They're hearing all of this.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. We'll do it live. So, LinkedIn specifically, there's this phenomenon where the way I describe it, we all learned how to do LinkedIn the wrong way. Right? We learned that LinkedIn, you have to be a specific kind of professional, quote unquote, where think of it as almost like the personification of that old school headshot, with the like cheesy background and the not great lighting.
Yeah.
That's effectively how you show up on LinkedIn, right? And so I think of what you described there as that second piece, that kind of like how you want people to perceive you as being sort of that it's, it's just wanting to fit in or wanting to put out there what you think people want to see from you. And that's certainly how I was throughout. I ignored LinkedIn basically throughout 12 years of practicing. Spent most of my career in insurance defense firms.
Yeah.
And I saw LinkedIn as a place where mainly I could get in trouble if I said the wrong thing, right? Or said something wrong. So, I didn't really see upside. I saw a lot of risk. And so in that environment, that brand, you start with, what do people want from me? And then you try to fit into that box, right?
Yeah.
And what we're talking about with the power of leveraging this platform or online spaces in general, in this world, it's just the way the world is changing. I'm increasingly convinced that the best way for us to adapt to what's happening is to become more of ourselves. That, in this world where that traditional path to success that we all grew up hearing about and thinking about, that path is getting harder and harder to pursue. Things like the cost of college. People don't stay at jobs all that long anymore, right? Like that whole thing, like pensions are kind of a thing of the past. And frankly, like the companies of today, the big companies of today have a lot fewer people than the big companies a generation ago did.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
So like that path is getting harder to access. And what we find is that a lot of people who actually win in that path don't have a great time doing it, right? Like Exhibit A would be the vast majority of people in big law. Maybe it's not fair to say I'm exposing myself, my own biases against that path.
Oh gosh, you're being reasonable. Shame on you for exhibiting one of the qualities I like about you, even if it's frustrating.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have anything against
like
the People are lovely. Anyway, so in this environment where things are changing so rapidly, Seth Godin would take a lot of my stuff, my guidance on this from. I remember him talking about like in the industrial age, to get ahead, you needed to fit in. And now in the connection age, as he coined it, you get ahead by standing out.
Right.
And like, that's what we need to do. So it's leaning into the things that make you different and make you you, that are how we can make better things happen. It's counterintuitive, and it really does run contrary to a lot of what I feel like I learned in school and a lot of us did. But it's certainly been what I'm finding as I get more and more comfortable with it. I know you found something similar, and it seems to be the case.
There's a book that I read a long time ago called Excellent Sheep, which is about the school system, mainly the United States school system, and about how it really is designed. Obviously there's a matching structure in terms of days of the week, the amount of time, and people can say like, oh, sure, part of it is constructed in direct response to corporations essentially needing kids to be in school while their workers are at work, so that way there's a place for the kids to be. But then we also look at how that structure gets ingrained into us as kids to both spend a specific chunk of our day living by someone else's rules, and that by the better that you follow the rules, the more you get rewarded, even if you're not really sure what the reward adds up to, except for apparently you get to do more of this for longer in life. Kind of a perverse incentive system. Now, you were talking about the being more of yourself. One thing I feel like I've noticed about the LinkedIn algorithm, and I could be totally wrong, which is why I'm glad I'm asking you about this, is when you and I were talking on the podcast last year, or even, in conversations that we had, or conversations at like the Elevate meeting and everything, where people were asking about LinkedIn, there were so many, it was very technical that people would ask. It was so much about, how often should I post? When should I post? What hashtag should I use? Image or no image? And I think I know you actually talked about this on LinkedIn. My perception has increasingly become that the algorithm is so sophisticated at this point that there's no one game to play except your own game, but maybe there are a couple of guardrails on it. Is that a fair perception?
Yes, that is a fair perception. I think it's 100% correct to say play your game. And by that, I mean, like, the most important thing is that you can show up consistently. So just something that you can sustain is the number one thing.
Right.
So like, whatever that game looks like for you today, I think it's worth trying to play 100%. I think, of course, the LinkedIn guy is going to say you should spend time on LinkedIn, but but I do think it's worth it for just about everybody listening to this. But in terms of like what works, it is true that there are 100 idiosyncrasies about that algorithm that will affect how a post does. Like, very few people, and this is something I've discovered through trial and error, I think I now am confident in saying that beach pictures do very badly. The posts that have pictures of somebody in a bathing suit do very badly. Now, if you think about it, and I'm speculating here, but I feel confident in saying this, why would that be the case? If you are LinkedIn, you can never have adult content. Like there can be, you can make no mistakes on that, right? So if you're LinkedIn, in a place
so can we officially call LinkedIn the least sexy social media?
I think that's fair, yes. I would love to see if anybody wants to argue that. But yeah, because it's the professional network, those guardrails have to be such that, on Facebook, that's on Twitter, like that stuff will find its way in. LinkedIn cannot have that happen. Simply cannot. So they make
That's
their
right.
guardrails. This is my theory again, where it's like somebody in a bathing suit will trip something in the algorithm that will flag and throttle it, right? So that it won't move. And maybe it'll move on. If it turns out it's okay, then it'll keep going, but maybe not. So like that's one example of a, like an idiosyncrasy that is not necessarily intuitive, but is very real in terms of how it affects how a post behaves. So people try to figure out, what's the right number of posts or what time of day. And you never actually did Justin Welsh's course, did you? The
I
operating
did.
system.
Yeah.
You did. Okay. So you
Which
know
is like, that's a comparison point. Very technical in a lot of that course.
well, now I owe a lot to Justin in that course.
Yeah.
It really did help. I did that in the fall, right around now, 3 years ago, as I was starting to pay attention to LinkedIn. And it helped open up the platform, not just doing the course, but starting to engage with people on the platform who had done the course. And now, 3 years on, looking back on it, I'm not sure that those rules ever applied. They may not have ever been real. It may have been, and I'm speculating on what, not trying to slam. I think Justin Welsh may have engineered all of that to train us all to help move Justin Welsh's offerings, right? Like I think like he may not be agent zero on this. There may be somebody before him who taught him. He's the dude who figured it out where he's now. I think his follower count is at like 575,000. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But I think that's what happened. It got in the water, it spread, and then eventually it just became conventional wisdom that you post at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, that if you take 2 days off, your content won't work, that you have to go comment for 20 minutes before you do anything. My client roster, we do not post for anybody more than twice a week. Half our clients, we post once a week. The amount that my clients engage on the platform varies rather dramatically. And so I'm in this fortunate position of, I'm getting a lot of data around what works and what doesn't work, specifically in the legal corner of the platform. And in this time where this year, so many people in the like LinkedIn nerd space talking about how reach is down and things are down. We don't get as far. And what I am seeing, or because while I'm a LinkedIn nerd, none of my clients are LinkedIn nerds and they have no desire to be LinkedIn nerds, is that, oh, no. Reach isn't down. Your reach is down. My reach is down. Clients, their reach is not down. Our reach is up. Like things are moving. And so that's helped me see some different things that are happening on the platform and how it's unfolded, where like the platform did decide, I think at some point, we don't want to be Facebook. So like the more personality, like the stuff I was doing, where it's like, I'm a very personality driven creator. The reach on that stuff started getting throttled. And then there's another aspect, and I'll stop jabbering at you on this, but I think it matters for a lot of people who are listening to this. The reason that my stuff and my LinkedIn nerd friends stuff has been going down in reach to a large, even though our engagement remains steady. When you see our stuff, you probably think it goes farther than it does in terms of impressions. The distinction that I've come to draw is one of saying, are you talking with us or are you talking to us? Are you coming from a place of affinity where you're one of us, or one of, I say, authority, which is effectively like you're selling to us, or you're talking to us? And, for somebody like you or me, Charlie, like we're inherently seen as sellers in this space, right? And so because of that dynamic is going to lead our stuff to move less far than like my best stuff these days tends to be stuff where I'm talking about my career as a lawyer, right?
Yep.
So it's affinity. It's me. I'm a lawyer talking about my life as a lawyer amongst other lawyers or even other professionals, right? And
Yeah.
so that sort of stuff then is going to go farther. And so for a lot of the people, if you're a lawyer listening to this, the way that we thought about posting on LinkedIn, most of us, has been largely just only the facts, man, right? And
100%.
there's so much upside to sharing your experiences of your career. And I describe this as basically two things, like inflection points in your
Mm-hmm.
career, in your life. And number two, strong opinions. Don't need to be hot takes, just things you really believe
Yeah.
about the practice, about your career, about life. And if you can just lead from those two places and thinking, I'm a lawyer, and I tend to think about lawyers who are talking to lawyers
Yeah.
as referral sources, like that stuff tends to do pretty well or can do well.
I love that, pointing out the way that you described what I usually refer to as a circular business model, which is in that instance is I'm selling to you how you do the same thing that I'm doing to you right now. So like a Facebook ads course that is sold via Facebook ads, a LinkedIn course that is sold on LinkedIn, but you've invited a new level to it. And it would be so fascinating to know, because I know some people do that unintentionally. I've known creators who have created games without intending to create the game because they, honest to goodness, thought that what they were saying was the solution to it based on their individual experience, and then created a network effect around it. It would be so fascinating, because Justin is a bright individual. That much is very clear. It'd be so fascinating to know at what point it became more intentional, because you're spot on, right? If you are telling everyone you've got to play between 8 and 9 a.m., and you're like, and I'm the guy who posts my stuff at 7:59 a.m., and the smartest thing you can do is go and comment on an influencer's post, you've created a massive network effect advantage. Now, there's not much that we can necessarily do about it. You can partially ride the wave on something like that, but I'll drop real quick that recently my best stuff, my stuff that I can just throw off the hump onto LinkedIn, that it really comes from an earnest place, something that I just wanted to share, very little like focused, I'm tactically trying to assemble this together, has been stuff that I'm posting after like 4 p.m. I've dropped something down at 7 or 9 p.m. and woken up the next day and it has my highest levels of impression engagement out of anything that I'm posting. I don't know why or how, but great. It means that I maybe have found something that works well for me and for my audience. And
I'm
I have to
seeing the
stop.
same thing as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
that actually posting at night is actually, I would say, like, I think 3 out of my maybe 5 top posts in terms of reach over the last, basically, one could be 6 months, were after 8 p.m. And I would not have thought that that was true.
So everyone who's listening, I want to let you know a little secret here, which is if after 7:30 p.m. you go and find someone who does LinkedIn posts, and they're talking to a law firm audience, you'll get higher engagement on your own posts if you come and engage with those people's posts. And I do have a course about that I'm putting together right now. It's a white paper that's $19.95. And we're just going to go ahead and put that out there.
It'd be valuable, Charlie. I mean, if you did it, it'd be worth it. It'd be worth it. I'd pay $20 for your thing.
I mean, look, I do believe that like going through something like Justin's course is really helpful to get yourself like a foundation for it. I have been a reseller of that course for good reason. I have a lot of people who have used that and gone on to a lot of success. But I also know that you, Tony, you've started to do like a next level version of that, where you are getting involved with small groups of LinkedIn positive folks who have a good vibe on it. How's that going? Yeah.
It's going well. So I've done one. The first one's in the books. And I was inspired to do this in part by my buddy, Darren McKee, who's one of the goats of social selling out here. He was my first coach on the subject.
Yeah.
And he's just so good. He started doing these cohorts about 9 months ago. And I was like, okay, I think I could do one of those for the legal space. And um, I loved it. I had a great time. We had 9 lawyers, and my goal there, to your point about the course versus this thing, I haven't made a course because I don't like that courses tend to not move needles for people. Right? That aspect of it, I object to, or I don't like it. So, my goal on this is precisely what I just said. I'm going to help you move the needle on
Right.
your LinkedIn game. So I'm keeping these things small enough, like 10 or fewer, where I can get a sense of where each person is on that, let's say, creator's journey, and figure out what you're bumping up against and identify, and then kind of help you get past that one so you can go bump into the next thing you're going to bump into 2 minutes later, right? But it's all progress. And I had a blast with the first one. It was 9 lawyers, and we're going to be doing these basically 4 weeks long, pretty much pretty stripped down design, where it's 4 or 5 Zoom calls, a LinkedIn DM thread, bringing everybody together, and then we have some resources that like on content and branding that you can use going forward. I had one idea actually yesterday, and I want to get your take on this.
Okay.
To the point about what we were just saying about Justin and saying, "Come engage on my stuff," and 8 a.m. and yada yada, like that energy piece of it, right? Like getting,
Yeah.
because people will come and there's just like this
Yes.
collection of energy. I had an idea of like, in something like the boot camp, what if we did like almost like workout classes, but the working out is like the showing up and engaging on LinkedIn in it could be even like a Zoom room, or
Yeah.
like a digital conference room. And so like trying to capture that energy and that like shared experience in a more direct way. What do you think about that? You think
Well,
that'll work?
I mean, I love the idea of like digital co-working. We actually have started doing it inside of Law Firm Alchemy as a team. We've put together co-working hours, which is like we're coming together as a team. Everyone might be working on their own thing, or we might all be collectively working on the same project. Mics are open, cameras are open, because I actually think there's it adds something to it. So there's definitely something to playing in the same space together. I also love workshop formats, and of course taking something in potential energy, turning into kinetic energy of, hey, everyone, okay, now we're all going to go find a post of a person who we've been meaning to connect with, and we're going to start making that connection in the comments, or we're going to send them a DM or whatever it's going to be. I know, by the way, like LinkedIn is filled with good material. Like all of the tactical, like what can you get from its stuff aside, it is filled with good ideas, strategies, takeaways, things that you can take off of it, which I think sometimes, for some folks gets lost in the process of the game of LinkedIn, which is fine. We're just reminding folks that you can pull great information off of there. But that also gives an info swap opportunity to this thing that you're talking about. Like, oh, hey, here's some cool ideas. Like, check out this post.
Yeah. Well, and most people who would be listening to this, I'm guessing, haven't gotten to the point where that's their problem on LinkedIn, that they're trying to, it's that most people still haven't gotten to the point where they've given the algo a sense of what to show them. Right. So there's this aspect of you curate your feed and what you see.
Yeah.
Like once you start showing up and spending time reading, engaging with posts you find interesting, that's how you get more stuff. So just another little tip for people.
Yeah. Which also means that, in my case, wanting to be able to talk with attorneys, I want to see what's going on in the lives of attorneys, which means even though there are a lot of coaches and stuff who want to connect with me because we're sharing an industry and a profession there, I am diligent about, all right, I want to make sure that I'm interacting with lawyers posts, because I want to know what's going on in the legal space. Like I want to see what like Joseph Fantini's talking about with Mass Tort Monday or something like that. These feeder systems where Yeah, you can go to the conferences. All the other spaces are really, really valuable, but LinkedIn is a great way to have, rather than say a Twitter news feed that's for general mass media, LinkedIn can be like an industry news feed, almost the
Yes.
way that, it takes the spot of, say, really localized reporting for an industry. And that's really powerful.
Well said.
All right, Tony. So if someone's hearing all this and like, well, I should do something with this, which you should. I'm interested in learning more from Tony. Maybe they're interested in participating in one of these cohorts, etc. Where do we send them to? And I think I might know the answer.
Indeed. Yeah, my LinkedIn profile is still the best place to find me. I have my email newsletter in the digital arena there. You can also find the application for the boot camps, where I'm not sure when this is going live, but I'm guessing the next one will be the January boot camp. So you can find more information there, as well as stuff about what our ghostwriting looks like.
And I remember when you told me about the boot camp. It's like, this is really cool. I know a lot of people who should participate in this. If you're listening to this, it is such an awesome way to get that kinetic energy on LinkedIn and actually work with someone who knows it really well. So Tony, you know the last question. What are you reading, watching, and listening to these days, my friend?
So I already told you Driven. Driven will
Yes.
be
Okay.
my book rec.
Yeah.
What am I watching? My wife and I have been watching New Girl. I never watched New Girl before.
A modestly charming show.
I'm having a nice time. It is modestly charming. Yes, that's a perfect description. And what am I listening to? That was the next one. The Acquired podcast is what I'm spending. It's my biggest podcast right now. It's two tech industry investor type guys telling the stories of great companies. So like, they just released a 6-hour episode about Facebook, and it it's like their episodes on Hermes. The episode on Hermes was like 3 hours, and that actually influenced how I've developed Contender this year. They have incredible episodes on Costco, Walmart, Nike. It's an excellent podcast. Nerding out over nerd stuff for entrepreneurs.
I love that. Well, Tony, my friend, as always, thank you for your time, energy, wisdom, insight, all the good stuff that you bring to the table. It's just also just a treat just to get to talk with you in general. So I appreciate you, Tony.
Thanks, Charlie. We haven't been doing it often enough. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach Us in Law School.